I'm fairly skeptical about this vaccine. You know, I know there's been a lot of talking it up and saying, oh, well, you know, could be middle of next year, whatever. I don't think that's going to happen. I think coronaviruses you don't get a vaccine for, things probably will die out or mutate into something far weaker. By that point, of course, we won't know that because we're not allowed to get it here. But beyond that, I would actually like to see, instead of him talking about the mandatory versus compulsory thing, I'd like to see the PM telling us what he's going to be doing about these states which are completely out of control, which have busted up the Federation in any sort of, you know, meaningful sense of Section 92 of the Constitution and anything else. You cannot have Queensland behaving the way it was and the way you detailed. You cannot have Dan Andrews behaving the way he is. It has impacts over the entire economy. We are all being brought down by this. There's a reason why we federated 100 years ago, and I'd like to hear a lot more from Scott Morrison about this and a lot less about some vaccine, which may or may not happen. Good on him for doing the deal, but that's a later problem. This is the problem here now.
Yeah. Look,
but Paul, sorry, Paul, can I interrupt there?
Of course you can.
I think that. Thank you. I think that it's quite correct that we've got to do something. And I had about 4 or 5 letters today, emails today, saying that why doesn't the PM do something about the states? The question is, what can he do?
Correct.
There's an amount of moral suasion that you can use. But that's the problem that we face, and we saw it in the fires. You know, we saw even our own members of our own party hacking at us at the federal level when the problem lay in the state. The biggest problem I think that we do face is our federation. We ain't going to change that in the short to medium term. But I'd also say to Corey that every time I saw a cut today in relation to the virus, it was explained that we've got into this because there is a chance of it working. It's one of the best things so far. If it does work, then we'll do it. And I think that's the requirement that's been put on it, and I think that's fairly safe.
But OK, but James, let's unpack a little more about what you're saying here, about what the PM should be doing, right? Now, OK, basically, National Cabinet, I don't know what's happening behind closed doors about whether they're screaming at each other or not, but that in the same way the federal cabinet may be screaming at each other at all time, but they present something different publicly. What's he supposed to do? Deny GST money to Queensland until it has border exemptions for...
Potentially.
Really?
Well, we're at the point now where it feels like he doesn't want to pick a fight with these states where they've got Labor governments in power, and weirdly in places like, Victoria, you've got this sort of Dan Maid's tale of everybody who's all just sort of loving what's happening there. They're voting for more and more and more restriction, weirdly.
So do you think the people of Victoria would be fine with the federal government turning around and denying them GST?
No, what I'm saying
They'd go nuts.
What I'm saying is that the PM seems to not want to pick the fight with the premiers because voters in that state seem to be bizarrely enraptured in some sort of Stockholm syndrome or whatever with Dan Andrews and the lockdowns and, oh, please keep us safe from this disease. It has an infection fatality rate of something like 0.25%.
Well, Corey, here's the thing. You've got these premiers who've all got their own timetables about elections. In the case of Queensland, it's coming up very bloody quickly. In the case of Northern Territory, it's this weekend, OK? They know that the politics of borders is through the roof popular, right? Because I'm all right, Jack, bugger you. But they've all gone a low road here, all of these state leaders. They're all fully legally allowed to do so under the Constitution. So how can the Prime Minister do anything but make us feel better for yelling at them?
Well, like the way the Commonwealth influences states to do anything through money. And I'm not sure whether the GST money is probably the best way in which to do it. But there's so much cash that just flows to state governments to go to local projects and various other things. And you never get between a premier and a bucket of cash. But the PM has played this game really well, all right? I'm going to say he's played a political game really well by removing the fractiousness from it. I think it'll backfire on him eventually. But, you know, the National Cabinet and cooperative and surrendering ideology and all of that sort of stuff for practical outcomes. And so he doesn't want to engage in that sort of battle because it'll undo the shtick that he's pulled up. But you've got Palaszczuk doing it, you've got Dan Andrews doing it, you've got Albanese, you've got Bowen, all the Labor Party are doing it, all happy to throw hand grenades that are completely undeserved or misrepresented, and no one in the Liberal Party seems to be firing back. I think that's a bit of a problem, Paul.